This is going to be about Iron John. I was idly watching TV, changing channels, and I came upon this show on PBS about Robert Bly, a poet from Minnesota. I don't know much about Robert Bly, and I don't want to, but I stayed with it for a few minutes, enough to be reminded that he wrote a non-fiction book, Iron John, said to be a self-help book for men. And I vaguely recall that it was a bestseller on the New York Times list for about a year. It was all about getting in touch with your wild man and maturing, that is, getting through the pain and disappointments in life and still be able to express your wild man, your Zeus energy. I did a piece on old Zeus, quite the character when it comes to being a god. I could recall that Bly would lead these retreats in the Minnesota woods, and a bunch of guys would stand around a huge bonfire, banging on drums, sparks flying, everyone freezing their ass off, but feeling good about being together and being men. What was most unusual about this was that it was taking place in Minnesota, not California. Later, Minnesota would produce Governor Jesse Ventura and Senator Al Franken. So there's a consistent, if surprising, thread there, I think. All of that really did happen. Bly wrote that book, Iron John, taking a couple hundred pages to explicate a fairy tale, explaining the deep inner meaning of golden ball and 3 golden apples. I did not read the book. I have very little interest in or toleration for deep inner meaning. Bly, being a poet, can go on about it at length. For example, at one part, the boy in the story appears on a white horse. For me, it's a white horse. For Bly, white stands for semen, saliva, water, milk, lakes, rivers, the sea, priesthood, health, strength, and all good things, fellowship and good company, the masculine principle, love and festivity, blessings, the purity of children and brides, persons with high moral purpose, purification, and a sort of abstract ideal state. I don't know about you, but I tended to drift away after semen. I remember years ago having to read Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter in school and being told at length what red meant, what lead meant, what pearl meant. I didn't like any part of it, and I've run away from allegory ever since. Stayed away from Hawthorne, too, all those crazy Puritans. So naturally, I did not read Robert Bly's book, nor did I join the mythopoetic men's movement. He was the head honcho of that, too. I feel about movements the same way I do about allegory. So I missed the whole hanging around in the woods, beating on drums, drinking whiskey from the bottle, and stamping my feet to keep from freezing male bonding thing. I would say I get more excited about Hoppin' John than I do about Iron John. But the next day, just to check, I looked up Iron John in the library catalog, even though I had no intention of reading it. In doing so, I saw the next book on the list, and it was Dating Iron John and Other Pleasures. It was a handbook to help women survive the 90s. That made me smile. I ordered a copy of that book. I have to say, it disappointed me. It was written by a woman who calls herself Linda Sunshine. There was nothing in it about Iron John, but there was a lot about dating. She said that she has dated a lot, and anyone who has dated a lot could not be good at it, because if you were good at it, you'd find someone and get married and stop dating. There's a painful logic in that. Even though she's no good at it, she's written several books about it, as well as related topics. She made a passing reference to Iron John Wayne and someone called Robert Sly, but nothing came of that. When Linda Sunshine tried to be funny, she made me cringe. When she was serious, as in the bit about dating, I thought she was pretty funny. Like her, I do wonder how men and women ever get together, and marvel whenever they do. Good chemistry between the two seems unlikely. Sort of a fairy tale. They lived happily ever after, that kind of thing. As for Iron John or Robert Bly, I think they are mostly forgotten now, except by PBS, which also remembered Thomas Merton. They flared up like a bonfire and then burned out, which is probably just as well. One more thing. Iron, in England, when the book came out, meant one that was a poof, like Elton John, no relation to IronJohn, was iron, which is maybe why the book did not catch on across the sea the way it did for a time in America, where iron meant iron.